Hello everyone, welcome to our channel Wisdom ML. And in this project, we'll be discussing how we can detect cervical cancer using machine learning approach. And in this approach, in this project, basically, there are lots of challenges involved because it is not an easy data set. Lots of missing values are there, lots of other challenges are there. So we'll be spending some time in data preprocessing, and it is really a real-time data set in healthcare domain. And you know that in my previous videos too, that before jumping into building any machine learning model specifically for healthcare projects, I used to explain the data set because especially in healthcare domain, we need to be aware of the domain of the problem. What is that particular disease? What are the features? What are their independent features which we are going to use in our machine learning for building our machine learning models? Because these features really play a critical role in building those models. And for even for explaining your model to any healthcare professional, you need to be well aware of those features. Means at least we should understand the basics of those features, why they are contributing to this particular disease. So we'll be getting detail of this data set, and then we'll discuss the approach, what approach we'll be going to use in this project. And in this part, basically, we'll be explaining the project overview, our approach, and most important, the data set which we are going to use in this project. And in the next part, we'll be going to actually implement the machine learning models and perform some model explainability approaches so that you can explain your model to any healthcare professional, and you can use this project in your crossing file as well. So let's start today's video. First of all, we need to understand what is cervical cancer. So cervical cancer is basically a type of cancer that occurs in the cells of cervix. It is basically the lower part of the uterus in women, and it connects to the vagina. And in almost all cervical cancer cases, 99% are linked to infection, which is known as human papilloma viruses. Short form is HPV, and it is an extremely common virus transmitted through sexual contact. Although most infections with HPV resolve spontaneously and cause no symptoms, they are asymptomatic, but persistent infection can cause cervical cancer in women. So this HPV virus is also a very indicative factor in terms of predicting cervical cancer. In terms of stats, if we can say cervical cancer is the fourth most common cancer in women. That is huge. And in 2018, an estimated 5,70,000 women were diagnosed with cervical cancer worldwide, and about 3,11,000 women died from this disease. So you can understand how serious this disease is. Almost 50% of the cases results into casualty. So next, we'll discuss about the machine learning approach that we're going to use. It is just a basic overview. The data set which we want to use in this project is basically available in UCI repository, and it has three core parameters or features, you can say. These three features are basically segregated into three groups of features. First one is demographic data, means age, okay, and you can say location and other personal things of the patients, personal individual properties of the patients. Then some of the regular habits, whether the patient is smoke or not, okay, like that, whatever the regular habits of the patients. Then comes the historical medical records in terms of different types of tests, if they have any previous history of cancer or not. So that will take care. Based on these independent features, we'll be building machine learning model. And by training machine learning model on those features, we'll be predicting cervical cancer. in terms of probability. And then we'll be explaining our model by demonstrating which features are important. What are the important factors means what are the important input features which are contributing in predicting cervical cancer. This is basically model specific. Whichever the model you are using depends on that. Uh, Whichever the model is giving higher accuracy, that means the model learns something from the data, and that means that it uh, uh, is it is recognizing some of the features which are very uh, intuitive in predicting cervical cancer. So let's talk about the data set, spend some time. So in this project, generally we have used cervical cancer risk factor data set, and as I told you that it is available in UCI ML repository. The data set was actually collected at hospital of Venezuela, the Caracas in Venezuela. Some of the doctors contributed this data set in UCI ML repository. And that's why UCI ML repository is a very good data repository for performing so that you can use the data sets for your machine learning projects. Because here different types of universities, researchers, different types of institutions contribute their data set, share their data set, donate their data sets so that you can use those open source data set in your researches. So this is really a good data source for collecting data sets for machine learning. If we talk about the data set, as I told you, three main features of this data sets are demographic information of the patients, regular habits, and their historical medical records. And there are 858 patients record present in this data set. So not a very big data set. It is a small data set, less than 1,000 records, but still it's good, not that much small. As we know that several it is a bit because you know that I told you that this cervical cancer is basically linked to sexual transmitted disease. So there are some features or there are some questionnaires which generally doctors have asked to the potential cervical cancer patients, and the reason is that these are quite due to privacy concern. Some of the patients have not answered these types of questions, so they are missing in those particular features. So this is the problem. We have to deal with those missing values. And the major problem, or you can say the major challenge in this data set is that you have four target values. Generally, in machine learning, you have seen that in basically in classification projects, what we do is what generally we have is generally one binary variable, and we have to predict. But here we have four target variables, and they are all binary variables: 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. Why so? The reason is that because of this the criticality and complexity of this cervical cancer. Okay, there is no single test that you can perform and tell that yeah, this person is suffering from cervical cancer. You have to perform these four tests, okay, and then you can assure by the result of these tests that whether you are suffering from cervical cancer or not. So in this project, what we'll do, we'll create four models, each each specific to the particular test, because these are all target variables, and then we'll combine those models and see based on those independent features, okay, which is X, will tell that whether the patient is suffering from cervical cancer or not, because it depends whether the person is suffering from Middleman, Schiller, cytology, biopsy. Okay, so there are some conditions that whether if the patient is suffering from these two, then there might be a chance that the patient is suffering from cervical cancer, or if it is suffering from these three, then you can say. So like that, so the basic purpose of this type of approach is that if we make four independent models so that we can tune the independent models individually so that we can accurately and more in a more focused approach, more concentrated approach, we can focus on a particular target variable and build one good model for it, one most best performing model for it. And then if we make any web application or any machine learning solution, then what you can do is simply you can give the independent features which are X, and based on that X, you can predict the probability of these four target variables. Okay, by applying four independent models on the common data sets. Okay, model 1, model 2, model 3, like that. And then you can means the patient has to answer only the specific questions which are present in the data set, and based on that uh, at once you'll get the result of all the tests based on the machine learning model. Okay, so and the basic purpose of this project is that because you have to perform four individual tests, so it is really time consuming. First, it is really time consuming to perform these four tests. Second, cost is another, the main factor. Time is the another factor. Okay, cost is very, and the third is we don't know which test, which test you will do first to assure that you are suffering from cervical cancer. Because as I told you, there is no single test is there for cervical cancer surety. So you have to perform these four tests, and this is the reason you cannot do a single test and say that I am suffering from cervical cancer. So the thing is that we don't know which tests we have to do first. So if we give some common information and get the result of all the four tests, then it will be a good solution, and it will really solve these three factors. Time will be less, the cost will decrease significantly, and as we don't know which tests are important, we'll get the status of all the four tests in a single shot. So now we'll discuss about the data set that we'll be going to use. Like that, these are the basic questions. Some of the questions are based on demographic factors. Okay, some of them are regular habits, and these are some medical records related uh, features. And here you know that all other features like age, number of sexual partners, first sexual intercourse age, number of pregnancies, smoke years, smoke packs per year, how many packs you utilize in a year. Okay. Then hormonal contraceptives years. Then comes the IUD and IUD years. STD is sexual transmitted disease, so it is a pool variable. So whether you have any sexual transmitted disease or not, this is the status for this. This is the number, how many STDs you have. Then there are some specific STDs uh, which are in terms of Boolean variables. So the patient has to answer whether they are suffering from such specific STDs or not. Then comes another Boolean variables, whether they are suffering from cancer previously or not, CIN, HPV, and all that. So some of the terms I want to explain that because other features you will understand they are very but obvious, but some of the medical features like IUD you don't know about CIN, you don't know about HPV. These things I will tell you. So what is IUD? IUD is basically an intrauterine device also known as intrauterine contraceptive device. This is basically a small T-shaped device, and it is basically used for controlling birth. Okay, it is a birth control device, and generally it is inserted into the uterus to prevent the pregnancy. And according to researchers, frequent use of IUD reduces the risk for developing cervical cancer. So it is very critical, very important, you can say, very important feature for predicting cervical cancer. So here now you will understand that what is the importance of understanding the features, right? So next comes another thing. These are the different diseases that I am not going to explain, because you know that at least that they are all sexually transmitted diseases. Apart from that, there is another term which is CIN. It is also very important. So before understanding CIN, we need to know about the cervix. Cervix is basically a neck of the uterus. It is known as neck of the uterus, and it is the lower part of the uterus in the human female reproduction system. And the basic two purpose it has: it facilitates the passage of sperm into the uterine cavity, and it maintains the sterility of the upper female reproductive tract, and basically it protects the uterine cavity and upper genital tract by preventing bacterial infection. Okay, so it has a really important role in the human body, especially in females. So what is CIN? CIN is basically cervical intraepithelial neoplasia, and it is also known as cervical dysplasia. It is basically abnormal growth of the cells on the surface of the cervix that could potentially lead to cervical cancer. So now you understand that what is the importance of IUDs, status of IUDs, and what is the status of CIN. Okay, if these are in positive numbers, or for example their values are 1 and 1, then you can say that the patient may be suffering from cervical cancer. But you know that in any medical disease, there are some other factors which play a role parallelly or easily explosively. So that thing we need to learn from the data, from the medical records of the patients, that what are those factors which are responsible for cervical cancer. These are not sure shot, but these are the findings which are given by the researchers, that if there is IUDs usage, then the probability will be lesser for cervical cancer. And in case of CIN, there is a chance, as you can see, there is a chance that it will lead to cervical cancer. So this is basically the data set which we have to use in this project. Now let's quickly go to the target variable that we going to predict. So before predicting the target variable, we need to know what is these four tests are. Okay, we need to know, because blindly predicting the predicting target variable will really not serve the purpose. So first one is the Hazelman test. Hazelman test. It is a test for cervical cancer by examining the cells on an instrument called colposcope. Okay. Second one is the Schiller test. In this test, iodine is applied to the cervix, and while applying the iodine, uh, then the iodine shows some colors, right? Brown color indicates healthy cells, while white, yellow color remain unsustained, and these colors indicate abnormal cells. Okay, so it also gives the probability of cervical cancer. You know that these type of tests cannot tell you individually that the patient is suffering from cervical cancer, because these are all probability based tests, that there may be a chance. Okay. Next comes the cytology test. Cytology refers to a path of branch of pathology that deals with the diagnosis of diseases and conditions through the examination of tissue samples from the body. So in this test, cervical cell, okay, the cells from the cervical cells taken from the pap smear or examination under a microscope. Okay, that spear examination means tissue examination. Okay. Next comes the biopsy. Biopsy, it is, you know that we generally heard that we need to do biopsy for getting know that the patient is suffering from uh, any cancerous disease or not. So biopsy is basically a surgical extraction to collect sample cells or tissues for further examination for identifying the presence or extent of a disease. So these are the four tests that we need to do while making a surety that the patient is suffering from cervical cancer. So in the next part, we'll be uh, actually implementing the machine learning models, and before that, we'll perform some data pre-processing. Then we'll build machine learning models. We'll segregate the data set based on these four target variables. Then we'll build machine learning models individually for these four target variables, and then we'll analyze the features, which features are important for predicting Hazelman tests, for predicting Schiller tests, for predicting cytology tests, and for predicting biopsy. And later on, what we'll do, we'll combine those features and see what are the common features, what will be the common features which are important in predicting cervical cancer, because the features which are common to Hazelman, Schiller, cytology, and biopsy will tell you that yeah, these are the common factors which are responsible in to get the intuition that the patient will suffer from cervical cancer. So thanks for watching this video, and in the next part we'll come up with actual machine learning.